For more on this, we're joined by political strategist Fred Hicks. On the anniversary of George Floyd's death, what would you say has changed over the past year?
Well, quite a bit. There's been an awakening / a reckoning here in America with the fact that Black lives are not treated with the same amount of respect by the system of policing in our country as non-Black lives. I've heard from friends across the racial spectrum that they just never really understood or realized until George Floyd's death, until watching Derek Chauvin's knee on his neck, that things really are different, that we have two different systems. But also, we've seen a backlash against this movement in several states, including Florida. We've seen the governor make and introduce legislation that actually prohibits protests and punishes protesters for incidences such as what we saw in Minneapolis. So if a George Floyd incident took place in Florida and people wanted to protest, that could actually be a felony according to Florida law. So we've seen two types of reactions to George Floyd's death, and not all of it's positive, but I am very hopeful that we will see some legislative changes that we talked about in the previous segment.
And let's talk a bit more specifically about that legislation. Biden hopes the Senate can quickly pass what's known and takes George Floyd's name, the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. But practically, what difference will that make, and how quickly could we see that difference?
Well, first of all, if they are able to pass it, it will be with a bipartisan effort, and that will send a signal to the police unions that they cannot operate with impunity. Whether or not the issue of qualified immunity is on the table and whether or not qualified immunity is removed or modified in some way, shape, or form, a bill that passes will send a signal to all the police unions and the police organizations in the country that things are a little bit different. Because, look, it's been notoriously difficult to hold police accountable because of immunity and because of the way that Americans feel about policing. So seeing this effort, seeing that there are even discussions on this already, to me, heralds that there's a new day. But if this legislation does pass, you might see something like people being able to sue departments, if not individual officers, in the case of a death or a serious injury at the hands of a police officer. Or you might see that issues like chokeholds or no-knock warrants or other things like that that are sort of considered aggressive forms of policing might also be banned. So there's still a lot at the table, but it does seem like qualified immunity, which is what gives police officers protection from being sued, even when they are in the wrong, that is a sticking point. But hearing that Lindsey Graham is open to modifying that and allowing certain cases is a huge step and very significant here in America.
And just, with regards to optimism regarding police reform, given the fact that shootings of non-white people by police have still continued in the US since George Floyd's murder, what does that do to optimism with regards to legislative reform?
Well, it's a two-sided coin for non-white Americans in this country. On the one hand, the fact that, again, there are discussions about this and that we have seen police officers held accountable, including Derek Chauvin when he was found guilty last month. Now, he has not yet been sentenced, and the other three officers who were around and did not do anything to stop Derek Chauvin's actions, they are yet to go to trial. But you have those moments like that where you feel very hopeful that things are changing and that you will be able to have justice. But then again, on the flip side, you have the fact that states are passing laws, again, to limit protests, even in the wake of a George Floyd type incident. And you see that it's taking a really long time for the Congress to get something done. But overall, while we are pessimistic with respect to the fact that other lives have been lost since George Floyd's last year, we are hopeful and optimistic that something will pass and that issues again, such as chokeholds and aggressive policing might actually be rolled back. And if nothing else, the fact that police can be taken to court and that they can be found guilty in the case of George Floyd or Anthony Hill in Georgia gives people hope, and not just African Americans, but really anyone, because this is an issue that's impacting Hispanic Americans as well, and other minorities. So this is not just a cause for Black Americans, but it's really a cause for a lot of non-white Americans as well.
Indeed. Fred Hicks, political strategist, thanks so much for coming on the show. We appreciate your thoughts.